Ladies and gentlemen, what just happened with the Philadelphia Eagles in this 2026 draft is starting to look less like a solid class and more like a calculated statement from Howie Roseman. And if you've been following this team closely, you can feel a pattern repeating itself again. This front office is not guessing anymore. They're identifying value, staying patient, and then striking at the exact right moment. And the perfect example of that? My Lemon. This is a player that, according to Matt Miller, was ranked as the top wide receiver in the entire class. And yet the Eagles managed to land him at pick number 20. Think about that for a second. There were real expectations that Lemon could go as high as 13 to the Rams or 16 to the Jets. And not only did he slide, but Philadelphia read the board perfectly, even jumping ahead of the Steelers, who were reportedly ready to take him at 21. That's not luck. That's control of the draft board. And when you break down Lemon as a player, it becomes even clearer why this pick is getting so much attention. He's not just another receiver added to the rotation. He fits the identity of this team. Tough, confident, aggressive after the catch, and versatile enough to line up anywhere. At USC, he thrived primarily in the slot, but there's no question he can play outside, and that flexibility is something this offense values heavily. There's also a comparison that keeps coming up: Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it's not just surface level. Similar size, similar play style, similar explosiveness once the ball is in their hands. Even their testing numbers are close. But what really matters is how they play, and both players have that same instinctive ability to read space, react instantly, and turn short gains into big plays. Now here's where things get even more interesting. And if you look even deeper into what the Philadelphia Eagles just built here, it starts to feel like this wasn't just about stacking talent, it was about reshaping the identity of the offense in a very deliberate way. Because think about the sequence. You go from adding a high-level separator and playmaker like My Lemon straight into a rare athletic tight end in Eli Stowers, and then you close it out with a developmental quarterback in Cole Payton, who brings a completely different dimension with his dual threat ability. That's not Sluchiny, that's layering versatility across every level of the offense around Jalen Hurts. And this is where it gets interesting for 2026 and beyond. With Lemon, you're getting a receiver who can immediately help move the chains, create yards after the catch, and give this offense flexibility in how it lines up. With Stowers, you're potentially unlocking more multiple tight end looks, especially in red zone situations where his size and explosiveness can become a mismatch nightmare. And with Peyton, even if he's not on the field right away, you're introducing the possibility of creative packages, similar to how some teams have used hybrid quarterbacks, to stress defenses in ways they're not prepared for. That's a lot of stress being placed on opposing defenses from different angles. But the real underlying theme here is something Howie Roseman has clearly embraced: sustainability. Instead of reacting to roster holes when they appear, the Eagles are getting ahead of them. Instead of waiting for a drop-off, they're preparing replacements while veterans are still in place. You saw that mindset with the mention of Dallas Goedert and his situation. You see it in the potential transition at wide receiver with A.J. Brown. And you definitely see it at quarterback depth, where having a pipeline behind Hurts matters more than ever in today's NFL. And let's not overlook something else that often gets missed in the excitement of draft grades. These players are walking into a very specific environment: a locker room with leadership, a coaching staff that has proven it can develop talent, and a roster that doesn't require rookies to carry the weight immediately. That matters a lot, because it allows someone like Lemon to grow into a bigger role naturally instead of being forced into it. It gives Stowers time to refine the details of his game while still contributing situationally. And it gives Peyton the freedom to develop without pressure, which is rare for a quarterback with his kind of athletic profile. Now, does that mean every pick is guaranteed to hit? Of course not. No draft class works out perfectly. But what you're seeing here is a front office increasing its margin for error by making smart, calculated bets on traits, production, and fit. And that's why national analysts keep circling back to this class. Because when you combine value, like landing a top-ranked receiver at 20, with long-term planning and scheme fit, you start to build something that extends beyond just one season. You start building continuity, and in a league where windows can close fast, that's how you keep yours open. So now the conversation shifts from "did the Eagles have a good draft?" to something much bigger: How dangerous can this offense actually become if even 2 of these 3 offensive additions hit early? And what does that mean for the future of this team around Jalen Hurts? Because the more you connect the dots here, the more it feels like this wasn't just about building for 2026. It was about extending a competitive window without ever letting it close. And that's where the real value of this draft starts to show up. Take a step back and think about how defenses are going to have to prepare for this version of the Philadelphia Eagles. You already have Jalen Hurts as a dual threat quarterback who can beat you through the air and on the ground. Now you potentially add a receiver like My Lemon who thrives in space and can turn short plays into explosive gains. Pair that with DeVonta Smith and suddenly you've got 2 dynamic route runners who can win at different levels of the field. Then you layer in Eli Stowers, a tight end who doesn't move like a traditional tight end, and now linebackers and safeties are forced into impossible matchups. Go smaller to match speed. You risk getting overpowered. Stay bigger. You risk getting burned down the seam. That's exactly the kind of offensive stress modern NFL teams are trying to create. And what makes it even more dangerous is the unpredictability. This isn't a one-dimensional unit. This is an offense that can shift tempo, formation, and personnel without substituting, which makes it harder for defenses to adjust. And if the Eagles decide to get creative with someone like Cole Payton in specific packages, now you're introducing an entirely different layer that defensive coordinators have to spend time preparing for, time they can't spend focusing on stopping Hurts. That's how you gain an edge before the game even starts. But there's another angle here that deserves attention, and it's something that often separates good teams from consistently elite ones: internal competition. By bringing in players like Lemon and Stowers, the Eagles aren't just adding depth, they're raising the standard across the board. Every rep in practice becomes more competitive. Every snap has to be earned. And that kind of environment tends to accelerate development, especially for young players who are trying to carve out roles early in their careers. It also creates flexibility for the coaching staff. If someone isn't producing, there are options. If someone gets injured, there are players ready to step in. And if everything clicks, then you're looking at an offense that can rotate weapons without losing efficiency. And that brings us back to Howie Roseman, because this is where his recent draft track record really starts to stand out. After earlier misses like Jalen Reagor, there's been a noticeable shift in approach, more emphasis on value, more patience, and a stronger alignment between scouting and coaching. The result? Impact players who contribute early and fit the system, and based on everything we've seen from this class so far, that trend looks like it's continuing. Still, there are questions that haven't been answered yet. How quickly can My Lemon adapt to the speed of the NFL game? Can Eli Stowers translate his elite athletic traits into consistent production at the next level? And how long will it take before Cole Payton is ready to be more than just a developmental piece? Those are the variables that will ultimately define this class. But one thing is already clear: the foundation has been set. This wasn't a flashy draft just for headlines. This was a strategic build designed to keep the Eagles competitive now while quietly preparing for the future. And if even part of this plan hits the way the front office expects, this team isn't just staying relevant, it's evolving. This move wasn't just about adding talent, it was about planning for what's next. There's already talk that A.J. Brown could be moved once his contract situation allows it, and if that happens, Lemon isn't just a complementary piece, he becomes part of the core alongside DeVonta Smith. That's a transition move disguised as a value pick, and it doesn't stop there. In the second round, the Eagles double down on offense with Eli Stowers, a tight end who might be one of the most unique athletes at his position in this entire class. At 6'4", 251 pounds, running a 4. 51-40 with elite explosion numbers, this is not a traditional tight end. Some teams even evaluated him as a wide receiver during the pre-draft process. And again, this fits a pattern. The Eagles are not waiting for needs to become problems. With Dallas Goedert entering the later stage of his career and his contract situation looming, Stowers steps in as a long-term solution who can also contribute immediately. He's not just a developmental player. He can run routes, stretch the field, and become a serious red zone weapon early on. And if the offense does shift into more 2 tight end sets, especially in a scenario without A.J. Brown, Stowers could see the field a lot sooner than people expect. Then you get to round 5 and once again there's that same philosophy, value and projection. Cole Payton out of North Dakota State is not being brought in to play right away. This is a long-term investment at the most important position in football, a dual threat quarterback with a strong arm, impressive deep ball accuracy, and real production, over 2,700 1,500 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, plus 777 rushing yards, and 13 rushing scores. This is a player with tools that you simply don't ignore in the 5th round. He's raw in certain areas. Yes, mechanics can improve. Consistency needs work. But the upside is there, and the Eagles are one of the few organizations willing to be patient enough to develop that. With Jalen Hurts firmly established as the starter, and veterans like Andy Dalton in the room, Peyton walks into an environment where he doesn't need to rush anything. He can learn, adapt, and potentially grow into a much bigger role down the line, especially with Tanner McKee entering the final year of his deal. So when you step back and look at the bigger picture, this draft isn't random. It's structured, it's forward thinking, it's aggressive in the right moments, and patient where it needs to be. The Eagles didn't just draft players, they built layers for the future while still reinforcing the present. And that brings us to the real question here, the one that matters most to you as a fan watching all of this unfold. Did Howie Roseman just quietly set this team up for another long-term offensive reload, or is there one move in this draft that you're still not fully convinced about? And when you start projecting this forward, that's when things really begin to take shape in a way that should get every Eagles fan paying attention. Because this isn't just about individual talent, it's about timing. Look at where this roster is right now. Jalen Hurts is in his prime. DeVonta Smith is already one of the most polished route runners in the league. And even with uncertainty surrounding A.J. Brown long term, the front office didn't wait around hoping things would work themselves out. They acted before the need became urgent. That's how you stay ahead in the NFL. My Lemon doesn't need to come in and be a superstar on day one. That's the luxury here. He can grow into the role, learn the system, and develop chemistry with Hurts while still contributing in meaningful ways early. And if he hits his ceiling, then what looked like a great value pick suddenly becomes a cornerstone piece of the offense. The same logic applies to Eli Stowers. With Dallas Goedert still in the building, Stowers gets the benefit of learning from a proven veteran while gradually carving out his own role. Maybe early on it's situational, red zone packages, seam routes, two tight end formations, but over time that role can expand, and if he develops the way the Eagles believe he can, you're not just replacing production, you're potentially upgrading the position athletically. And then there's Cole Payton, who might be the most intriguing piece of this entire puzzle, not because of what he is right now, but because of what he could become. A quarterback with his size, mobility, and arm strength doesn't usually fall to the 5th round. The production is there, the traits are there. The question has always been refinement, and in Philadelphia, he lands in one of the few situations where he can actually take the time to develop without pressure. Sitting behind Hurts, learning from veterans like Andy Dalton, and potentially benefiting from a system that already embraces quarterback mobility. This is about as ideal as it gets for a player like him. And here's the part that really ties all of this together. None of these moves feel desperate. There's no reaching for need, no panic picks, no short-term thinking. Everything about this draft reflects confidence in the roster, clarity in the plan, and discipline in execution. That's not something every team can say. So when people look back on this class months from now, or even years from now, they might not just remember the names. They'll remember the strategy, the patience to let the board fall, the awareness to move when necessary, and the vision to build not just for today, but for what this team will need tomorrow. And if that vision plays out